Is there anything different that you're going to add to your tracker this week, or anything you're going to change up? You said you're going to do 3 phone calling sessions. Anything else? Okay, so Cheryl, California, while she's typing that, be sure and go through these question starters on page 11, well, actually, 10, 11, and 12. There's a ton of question starters there for you to fill in. Now, I really want you to send me your sample questions as soon as you can. And I probably should get a catalog from you, or maybe I need to go on a website, because I know the pros and cons of Amway is you have a huge array of products. And so whereas Tupperware, you can go right for the kitchen, okay? So we need to come up with some questions that are broad and then can be quickly narrowed into something, and a couple more questions on that narrower area. Is that a word? Okay, does that make sense?
It does. With the business, what I've done, Michelle, is to, of all the different directions, anyway, I have focused in on the artistry, skincare, and then along, as we were doing with the booth, along with that, I introduced the women's pack, the Nutrilite women's pack. So a couple of reasons. Number one, we all want to be healthier, and we all want to look our best. So when I approach the gals, I'm introducing those 2 things, and then I'm showing some things like the ribbon albums. But because of the season, sometimes I will tweak the ribbon albums to like number 1 position, just because of the holiday, that sort of thing. Whatever might open a door would be, everybody's starting to think about shopping,
right?
And so that's kind of why, if that's sort of in the front of all of our minds, then that's sort of what I'm leading with.
Okay, so Cheryl, I'm going to tell you this kind of as a kind of be careful on this.
Okay.
When we make assumptions, that will close off opportunities.
Okay.
Let me give you an example. Because you have this wide range of products, and I heard you say, we all want to feel and look our best, which is probably consistent, except that not everybody is ready to make changes. It's not necessarily the highest on everybody's list for the changes they want to make. Okay, so let me give you this story that it always clicks with everybody, and it's not even a typical industry that you'd think of at all. So I was talking to a group of people who actually do stuff with wedding expos, okay? And the one gal was an officiator, so she did weddings. And we were talking, and she would have these booths, and the prospective brides had come through, and she would talk to them and try to tell them a little bit about what they did when they officiated weddings. Okay, so you're gonna find this just fascinating, Cheryl, California, because it was such this huge aha moment for this gal. So people would come to her booth, and she would introduce herself, and she would just tell them what she did. Okay, we do these weddings, we officiate, and they had a couple examples there to make the wedding kind of unique and personalize it. Okay, let me ask you real quick, is the connection okay for everybody? It's okay? Okay. And yes. So I got talking to her, and I said, well, here's another idea. I said, let me ask you this. Is there maybe 10 different ways that you would officiate or make a wedding unique or special to a couple? And she says, well, yeah, there's, at least 10 or so. I says, but when they came to your booth, you probably only talked about 3 of them, right? And she says, yeah, because it was one of those things. She didn't want to keep them there all day and, you know, bore them. And I said, okay, so what if instead of when they come to your booth, you know, hi, I'm Susie, I officiate weddings. Here's a couple special things I do. I said, what if instead they come to your booth, hey, tell me about your wedding date. Where's the location? What are some things you've thought about to make this special and unique? What are you thinking about when you think about, you know, who does the ceremony for you? What kind of unique things were you wanting to have? I said, what if they talk about number 7 of the 10, but because you only told them about number 3, you missed out on business because they had no idea number 7, the one they wanted, was something that you did. And whereas if they tell you what they want and you go, oh, I happen to do that, instead of they didn't know you do it because you talked about your top 3 and then they kept walking. I says, if you ask them about their wedding and what they want, then you can go, oh, you know what? That either I do that or that is something I could start doing. And it was like, bing! I mean, she almost started to cry because she goes, oh my gosh, I've been doing it wrong! I mean, you just saw this like, holy cow, I could have been having more business. And I mean, she was doing pretty well, relatively speaking, but she was like, oh my gosh, asking more questions is going to get me a ton more business. What was I doing? And I'm like, everybody does it the best that they know how. That was how she knew how to do it. She didn't know how to ask questions at the time. But when I taught her to carefully ask people questions and find out, you know, I'm like, be curious about their weddings. I mean, what bride doesn't want to, you know, talk about her plans for her wedding? And
Right.
one, makes people like you more because they like to talk about themselves. And 2, he could say, oh, that unique thing that I didn't mention, of course, that's something I could do for you. And so it's so the same way with Amway. You've got this broad range of things. And if you just go in with this assumption that, oh, everybody likes this, or a big majority do, there's a possibility you're going to miss out on some sales because they didn't realize Amway carries XYZ. I mean, when my parents did it, how many years ago would this have been? Over 30, tells you my age. But I still remember, kitchenware and games and toys and vitamins. And I mean, there was everything that you could imagine. And so somehow we've got to come up with some questions that, you have your top sellers, you probably have your top 10 sellers, and we need to come up with some questions that, like, tell me if there was one area of your life you could improve in, or if there's one thing that think, gosh, this would be something I'd like to be doing more of for my family. I think if we said something like, what's one thing you'd like to be doing more of for yourself? What's one thing you'd like to be doing more of for your family? What's one thing that if you changed and were more consistent about in your life, that it would make the biggest difference in your life? And see if what they say has any products that match it. Okay.
Okay.
And okay, because there might be some, if someone happens to mention, I don't know. So we need to look at that kind of a broader range question and then narrow it down. Okay.
Okay.
So see how it's kind of the same thing, Cheryl, California, with broad range of, what your products offer and then narrow it down. Okay. So this applies to both of you. It's just Emily's a little bit different in that. Okay. All right. So if you're looking at lesson number 3, and Cheryl, California, if you could send me your address. Cheryl, Oregon, I did get your address. So I'll get this printed off and sent to you. But are you looking at it? Did you happen to get at least lesson 3 printed off? Or either
No, I have two printed off. I should have, and I apologize. I did not print it
Okay.
off.
All right, no problem. Okay, so let me see here what we need to talk about real quick. Okay, so one of the things that you're going to start keeping track of are your personal goals. Yay, you got the whole print. The workbook's fun, huh? Your daughter's very jealous I didn't have this done before we started with her group. So you have a leg up on Miss Elizabeth. Okay, so on this first page, what we're going to start talking about is your very specific business goals. Okay, you've been working on your bucket list. You see how that helps, how it kind of opens your heart. And here you've already booked a new party, Cheryl, California. So you're starting to get going. You're starting to see the benefit emotionally. You got brave enough to get on that phone, which always is a hump we all have to get over, including myself. Okay, so that's awesome. Okay. All right, so what we want to do is really, really get specific about your goals, okay? And this is the thing. Have I told you a little bit about the habits? 90% of what we do in our life is out of habits.
Mm-hmm.
So I explain that to you. Okay.
Yes.
This is so important that we start to figure out your goals and break those down into specific activity. with an educated guess of how much activity it takes. You know, if I want to book 10 parties, how many phone calls is it going to take? And I'll tell you a little secret about Elizabeth. She had this goal to make, it was either 300 or 500 phone calls. And I'm like, look, I'm going to teach you a more effective way to make your phone calls, because she wanted to book, I don't know. All I know is she wasn't trying to book 100 parties, and I can usually book about 1 out of 3, especially if it's like a previous customer, a previous hostess, someone I know who likes the product. And she had this outrageous number of phone calls she wanted to make, and I'm like, why? You don't need to make that many phone calls. At first I didn't say anything. I was like, okay, knowing that no human being has that much time. She's a good mom. You know, she wasn't going to check out for 3 weeks and only make phone calls. And I just was like, all right, I just let her be there for a minute. And finally we talked, and I'm like, look, I can help you make phone calls effectively enough. You don't need to make anywhere near 300 phone calls. I'm like, you don't need to do that. And so that's the thing. It's like, we've got to really figure out so that, you know, when you're done in the day, you know, okay, I made this many phone calls, I booked this many parties. Now tomorrow when I do it again, you know, you need to know when you've accomplished your goals. And she just had this big number of phone calls to make versus first starting with a number. She did kind of have a number of parties that she wanted, but she was more focused on this crazy number of phone calls. Okay. And she's totally learned now, but it's so important that we figure out how much money you want to make, how much activity. So for Cheryl, California, you're more about parties, and Cheryl, Oregon, you're more about one-on-ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't do a ton of parties. Okay. And so how much activity does it take on average to make that much money? Then how many phone calls and appointments does it take, and and break it down to, and then, you know, if you're needing new contacts, how many new contacts do I need to make this week to then get customers, to then have one-on-ones or parties, to then make this much money? So we can see it flow both directions.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So one of the things that you're going to start doing, and we're going to okay, if you see on the sheet, I'm trying to remember how I did this. Okay, so over the last 3 months, on this first sheet, I want you to put down what your personal sales, number of parties, average number of attendees per party, amount sold per party, personal recruits, and team sales. I need you to go and find those numbers and fill that in. And then we're going to set some goals for just 30 days. Okay? We need to make these goals at the beginning small and measurable so that you can see. If we try to make a 6-month goal and your belief in what you can do is relatively small, you won't necessarily set a goal as big as that you could. Okay.
Mhm.
We just want to give you some little mini successes to build on. I mean, Cheryl, California, that smile on your face of, I booked one party. I mean, I know that's nowhere close to your big goal, but it was a small success that you're like, I can build on that. Yeah, baby.
Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
And you've booked appointments, Cheryl, Oregon. And that's the thing. It's like, we want to get those small successes that add up. So then you're like, okay, I can reach for this bigger goal. Rather, you really increase the number of parties, or there's a title, which I know, Cheryl, California, we want to be careful on that, because I know that a title, you want the money and the opportunities that come with it, but you're technically not that concerned about having a title. You're more about the people that you're touching. And so it's just, we know that our percentages and our what's the word, the compensation usually goes up when we hit certain levels. So that, it's that interesting balance of how we state that goal that we have to be careful about. So I want your history. Okay. So you need to do this. You need to go through this little history in the last 3 months, these areas. And you're going to be, instead of number of parties and attendees, I want to know per week each month how many one-on-ones you had. Okay. And if you got any referrals from those. All right. So, and Cheryl, California, this should be pretty simple for you to fill out if it's somewhere easily accessible on your company's, history or whatnot. Okay. So then from there, I want you to really think about and have some numbers for next month or next week as to how many you want to do in the next 30 days. The interesting thing about this 1 month is that this is Christmas time.
Mhm.
This is gift giving. Even if we were in a Jewish area, it's Hanukkah, it's just a gift giving season, no matter what religion you are. And so your numbers are going to be, we're really going to have to work this smart and be reasonable and be logical, because I would guess you all are going to have naturally higher sales because it's gift giving season, and especially if you can explain why your product is an awesome gift to give. And then we got to be reasonable about December and January. But with that being said, I'm a huge believer that if you want to do sales and if you want to recruit and do those things bad enough, those last 2 weeks of December and going into January, I always did sales and recruiting in those months when other people would just choose not to even try. Okay. So anything is possible, but your numbers are going to be a little up and down in these next 60 days. Okay. And then February, middle of January, February, when people start getting their tax dollars, your sales can totally skyrocket again if you work it really smart. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the thing. Whereas, let's see here. So one of the things is that if this was like February, March, April, it would be very easy to measure your numbers and have a very consistent climb. This is a little different, okay? As much as we can, we want to help you hit it hard now, even though that's not the natural process in my training. But I promise you, I can help you do sales and recruiting in December and January, whereas you probably would in other years just kind of fall off and not bother because so many companies, it's not so much the companies do, but the people around you, like, oh, nobody does sales this time of year, la 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 la. Yeah, whatever. That's not true. It's less per person, okay? But if you work smart, you can still do it. That makes sense?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so set those 30-day goals. Okay, and then what we're going to do is, if you look on the other side of the page, there's some really important things to understand. First of all, any direct sales business, multi-level marketing business, if you're doing less than 4 activities a month, it's a hobby and it costs you money. Okay, especially if you're having to buy samples or catalogs or things like that. It's 4, no less than 4, or it's a hobby and it costs you money. Okay, so that's the first general rule. And that's something I know both of you have higher goals than 4 a month. So that's not as much of an issue for you, but it's something to keep in the back of your head when you are recruiting and when you have people that you're signing up, that they understand that they're going to be spending more money than they make if they're not doing at least 4 activities a month. Okay? And I don't care if they all get done in one weekend and you don't do anything the whole rest of the month. Or if it's 1 a week, I don't care which it is. Either way, you got to have at least an average of 4. Okay. The next thing is, I'm a huge believer, and we'll talk more about phone calling next week. I'm a really big believer. Cheryl, California, I'd love to know what your habits are with this. I'm a big believer in a 1-2 hour chunk phone calling time. And there's a couple of reasons for this. Okay. The first one is, it usually takes time to get ready to make phone calls. You get your list, you find your names, you find the phone numbers, you sit down, you get your drink of water, whatever you're going to do. And then when you wrap it up, it takes time. If you got to send a quick email or, put stuff away or whatever it is, it takes a few minutes there. So if you got about 10 minutes total, 10, 15 minutes total, if you choose to do phone calls 3 to 4 times a week at maybe 30, 45 minutes a piece, you're going to end up with about, an hour's worth of time of start up and start and, bring it down. Okay. Whereas if you do 1 2-hour session, you have 1 time of prep. The other thing that's important to understand with that is that when you stay on the phone for 2 hours, there's a really high likelihood you're going to get some yeses. Okay? And we always want yeses, because then we have, cute smiles like Cheryl, California, and we're excited and we're willing to get on the phone again. When you spend only 30 minutes on the phone, and it may be with only 1 client if it's for 30 minutes, if you have a no for that 1 time period, it's very hard to want to get on the phone again. Okay. When I was doing direct sales on a consistent basis, it was so funny because I had to train. For me, I had little kids and I had to train my husband. This is my phone calling time. And unless the house was on fire, he needed to pretend I was not here. He had to be in charge. Okay. Now, the two of you don't have quite the same scenario, but we have to train those around us to understand this is what we got to do. So I took this phone calling session and I'd go hide in my room and I'd make these phone calls. And I'd get through about an hour, and we had our kitchen was upstairs, and then there was it was a loft kind of area of the dining room looking down on the living room. And I'd come out, and my husband would be down there, and I'd be like, guess what? I've booked this many parties and done this much of sales and have this many recruiting calls. He's like, awesome, go back and finish your second hour. And I'd go back and I'd have this whole list of things that I'd accomplished. You will get yeses in 2 hours, okay? You will get some no's, who cares? You will get some yeses. And that's the whole point, is to finish on a high and make sure you had a successful experience such that you want to do it again. So I don't know what your habits are, Cheryl, California. I know you talked about being on the phone 3 times this week. But if you can get through most of your stuff in a 1 2-hour session, you got 6 days free off the phone. Okay. So whatever it takes to get to that goal, that's what you need to do. And if you do it in 1 chunk time. Now, the only exception to this is with parties you have coming up, or a recruit interview or something like that, you're going to have to make a couple little phone calls, just reminders, hey, you know, checking in, make sure we're on for tomorrow. So that's a little bit of exception to the rule. But overall sales calls, most of those you should be able to do in about a 2-hour phone calling session once a week. So that'd be exciting to like 2 hours done.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So that's something I want to challenge you to do. And that can be put on the left-hand side of your tracker where it says once a week things. You can have your 1 2-hour phone calling session, be done with it, check that off, get your 5 points. You don't need to put that in your weekly up to the top one, and you need to do it multiple times a week. Okay. So that's up to you, but that's my advice on that. All right. So with that being said, if you go down a little ways on that paper, it breaks it down into 4 weeks. You have phone calling, you have hostess coaching, social media, class preparation, which that would be more individual one-on-one preparations, team building, recruit interviews, and customer service. Those are some specific goals and time slots that you need to put into your schedule, okay? Making sure that all those things are happening so that your business is flowing. Posting so many things. Decide how many times and how often you're going to post on social media. Scheduling in their hostess time for you that Cheryl, California, or Oregon, I apologize. That's going to be more your follow-up. Hey, we'll be seeing you tomorrow at 2:00. In your phone calling, are you going to do that in 1 2-hour block? Are you going to do that in 3 1-hour blocks? What are you going to do? Prep time for things. We always got to put that in there. Your team building, who needs to be called? What newsletters do you need to create? Recruiting interviews and your customer service, sending out your thank yous, those kind of things. So I want these things scheduled in your calendar, okay? And if you see, phone callings first, because the only 2 things that make you money are seeing people and being on the phone. Some texting and some social media if you're getting good at messaging, not just posting. You have to actually message an individual person and have a conversation. So those have a small percentage. But otherwise, those things need to go on your calendar and get consistent about them, and you'll see more success. Okay?
Okay.
So we're going to get this broke down into small pieces. Okay. Okay. So the next one, we have becoming business-minded and sales history and future goals. I got to figure out why I have this on 2 different pages. Hang on a second. I got to figure out what my brilliant idea was that now I'm misunderstanding. Okay, I think I can take this one thing off the first page. Sorry. Okay, it's kind of duplicated on sales history and future goals. Okay, so on this big sheet, on the sales history and future goals, you can basically decide to put down your history for the last 3 months on the first page or the 4th page. Sorry, I need to fix that. And then you're going to have your monthly goals, what your goal actually was and what your actual total was. But only do that 1 month at a time. Don't go out any farther than that yet. Okay, one other thing on becoming business-minded that is important to add in your mind is also staying balanced. Okay, so you're going to have things like connecting with people that you love, any sort of community service. When are you going to do meals? If you're going to go spend the day in Tri-Cities, Cheryl, Oregon, you know, are you going to put a meal on a crock pot dinner, you know, for you and your husband when you get home, or, you know, what are you going to do? But there's a whole list of here, a whole list of things here to really think about. And where it says, you know, what activities do you need to schedule in? So those are going to be written down here at the bottom. I've already given you a list of quite a few things to do that you can, you know, use these. You each are going to call them something a little different because one of you do more one-on-ones, one of you do more parties. But I know, Cheryl, California, you also have an opportunity to make some pretty decent money with one-on-ones when you organize somebody's cupboard, right? That's pretty good money when you like do the whole thing and it's all pretty organized, okay? So you need to decide what the specific activities are that you're going to do and how often. And so the next thing you need to do is actually put those in your calendar, okay? Who of you uses an electronic calendar? Anybody use an electronic calendar? Nope. So you use a hard copy calendar? Okay,
Yes.
that's fine. Do you use a phone that has an alarm on it?
Mine has an alarm on it. I don't use it.
Do you use a smartphone, or do you have
Yes.
okay, do you
Yes.
both have smartphones? Yes,
Do I
okay.
what?
You both have smartphones. Okay.
Yes.
So this is the thing. If you're finding, and maybe this won't be as much of a struggle for you. I have 4 children, so there's a lot of distractions in my life. So maybe it won't be as hard. I don't know. If there's an activity that you get to the end of your week and you go, I never made time for blank, hostess coaching or sending out thank yous or whatever it is. If there's this thing that you're like, I'm not getting that done, you need to set an alarm. Put it in the calendar in here, set an alarm for it to go off at this day, at this time, that this is what you're going to do, okay? This is a great tool to help you create habits, your alarm on here, okay? If you don't want to use the electric calendar, I don't care, but that electronic calendar, but I do want you using this alarm if you get to the end of the week and you realize there's this thing that I just was not as consistent as I want to be, okay? So that is a great way to do that, and to set a specific time and specific day. I really want you getting deliberate about this until it becomes a habit. You won't have to do it as much after you get it as a habit, but right now, you got to be really, really deliberate about it, or it's not going to happen as often. Okay? Clear as mud?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the other thing is to make sure that you have a consistent time for reviewing your goals and reading or listening to your daily motivation. Okay? So these forms are some things that you need to fill out and start getting. And the thing is, the reason why the tracker is only a week's worth of goals is so that when you get to the end of the week, you go, either, man, this is just becoming habit. I don't have to think about it anymore. And then you can choose a new one, okay? And or you get to the end of the week and you go, you know what? 2 1-hour phone calls isn't enough. Or you get to the week and you go, I met 10 people and 8 of them become customers. You know what? I only need to meet 5. Or you get to the end of the week. You can reflect. You can change up what you're going to do each week to help you keep climbing up that success ladder. Okay? Versus 30 days, sometimes is a long time. You get to the end and you're like, I didn't get where I needed, and it was a long time before you made any changes. So we want to make those shifts every 7 days, okay? Some people choose to use their tracker and start with today, you know, so today for you guys is Thursday. That would be on the top of the tracker. On that right-hand side, you write in the days of the week. So some of you, it might be Thursday. Maybe you like to start your weeks on Monday. Whatever you want to do, I don't care. But just make sure that you're using it and you're figuring out what specific actions you need. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So any question on any of this activity?
No, ma'am.
Okay. I want to give the last couple of minutes. I I had the opportunity to go to a mastermind group in Yakima a couple of weeks ago, and it was neat. It was really fun to present, here's something that I want to accomplish, and allow everybody to give each other feedback. I mean, I do have several good ideas for you, but I'm not going to claim to have all the ideas. Both of you will have some ideas for each other that are inspiring and will help each of you to grow. So if there's like this one thing you're like, man, I want to get over this hump this week, or I want to figure out how to, it's the holidays, I want to figure out how to reach out to this customer, or I'm trying to figure out exactly what I want to put on social media. I don't know. And it may not be any of those. Okay. Is there any one thing that you would like us as a group to do a little bit of brainstorming for you?
Hmm. Right now, I'm not thinking of anything.
Okay. Anything for you, Cheryl, California? No? Okay. Nothing? All right. So, are you feeling good about writing your questions and getting a solid game plan for yourself and solid goals?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I'll look forward to getting your goals from you. You can just go look up those forms electronically. You can't open the document, right, Cheryl, Oregon? You can.
Um,
The workbook. Can you open it?
I can open it if I was going to go ahead and print it, but are you talking about just filling it out and then sending it back to you?
I just mean, can you open the workbook to see what I'm referring to?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I want you to do. So open that workbook,
Okay.
be able to see the documents and what it is, information I need you to send back, both so you can create
Okay.
questions and two, so you can create your goals.
Okay. Okay.
Okay? All right.
Yes.
Okay. We will plan on next week at 9 o'clock again. And next week we are going to get into the phone calling system, which is an incredibly powerful tool. Okay?
Good.
Sound fun?
Look forward to it.
All right.
Yes.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right. Anything I can do for you, Cheryl, California? No?
It
Okay.
looks like a gorgeous sunny day there. It's not?
Is it cold?
If she says 50's cold, I'm going to 68. Oh no. We're 26.
You're so cute. Yeah, we have it, but it's okay. We've had such an amazing fall. I'm laughing at everybody complaining because I'm just like, really? Like, it was like 60 degrees to like November 7th or something. I'm like,
Yes.
really? It's like, could get worse.
Gorgeous.
What city in California are you in, Cheryl?
San Diego.
Oh, rough life you have. I think we need to find a few more people down there that I can just have to take a business trip down there. All right, I'll do a coastal trip. I'll go through Portland, do a thing with your daughter, and then come see you. How does that sound? She wants me to come train in January. All right. Okay, ladies, have a great week. Let's
Thanks.
flip up this Christmas season, and you guys are awesome. Keep doing your thing.
Thanks, Michelle.
You bet.
Bye-bye.